ਔਰ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਦੇਰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਹਰਦੀਪ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ, ਸਾਡੇ ਨਿਊਜ਼ ਐਡੀਟਰ ਰਿਪੋਰਟਰ, ਔਰ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਡਾਊਨਟਾਊਨ ਤੋਂ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀ। ਐਂਡਰੀਆ ਹਾਰਵਥ ਅੱਜ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸੀ ਸਵੇਰੇ। ਸੋ ਇੱਕ ਆਖਰੀ ਹੌਕਾ ਦੇਣ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਐਂਡਰੀਆ ਹਾਰਵਥ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੋਏ ਸੀ। ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਸਟੀਵਨ ਡੈਲ ਡੂਕਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੇਨਲੀ ਫੋਕਸ ਕੀਤਾ ਮਿਸਾਗਾ 'ਤੇ। 4 ਤੋਂ 5 ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਪੜਾਅ ਸੀ, ਔਰ ਐਂਡਰੀਆ ਹਾਰਵਥ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ 'ਚ ਕੋਈ 4-5 ਵਾਰੀ ਇਸ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਏ ਨੇ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਲੈਣੀ ਪਈ, ਕੋਵਿਡ ਕਰਕੇ ਇਨਫੈਕਟਡ ਹੋ ਗਏ ਸੀਗੇ। ਪਰ ਡਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਏ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਵਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਲਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ। ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਵੇ ਤੇ ਡਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਸਾਰਾ ਦਿਨ ਕੋਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਕੋਈ ਈਵੈਂਟ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ। ਇੱਕ ਰੈਲੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਰੱਖੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਵੱਡੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਈਟੋਬੀਕੋ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਅੱਜ ਵੀ ਕਿਤੇ ਉਹ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਵਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੇਣਗੇ। ਤੋ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਸਵਾਲ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਕਿ ਡਰੱਗ ਫੋਰਡ ਕਿਉਂ ਅਵੋਇਡ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਇਸ ਚੋਣ ਮੁਹਿੰਮ ਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਪੱਤਰਕਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ, ਮੀਡੀਆ ਨੂੰ। ਅਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੋਈ ਬਲੈਂਕਟ ਆਰਡਰ ਕੀਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ, ਕੋਈ ਗੁਪਤ ਆਰਡਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੈਂਡੀਡੇਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਡਿਬੇਟਾਂ 'ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਜਾਣਾ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਹਿੱਸਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੈਣਾ, ਕਿਤੇ ਖਤਰਾ ਹੈ ਮਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਗੜਬੜ ਨਾ ਹੋ ਜਾਏ, ਜਾਂ ਓਵਰ ਕੌਨਫੀਡੈਂਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਦਾਂ ਹੀ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਜਿੱਤ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਤੇ ਫਿਰ ਕੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਕੋਲ ਪੇਸ਼ ਹੋਣ ਦੀ। ਕਾਰਨ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਵੋਟਰਸ ਨੇ ਡਿਸਾਈਡ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ। ਤਾਂ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਨੂੰ ਵੋਟਾਂ ਪੈਣੀਆਂ। ਚੋਣ ਪ੍ਰਚਾਰ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਅੱਜ ਉਹ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੰਦ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ। ਅਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਐਡਸ ਨੂੰ ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈ, ਲੇਕਿਨ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਔਰ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਲਾਈਵ ਟੈਲੀਕਾਸਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਸੀ TV ਤੋਂ ਇਸ ਸਾਰਾ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਨੌਨ ਸਟਾਪ 8 ਵਜੇ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਦਿਆਂਗੇ। ਮਿਡਨਾਈਟ ਤੱਕ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਅਸੀਂ ਮਿੰਟ ਦਰ ਮਿੰਟ ਜੋ ਵੀ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਂਝੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਾਂਗੇ। ਤੋ ਪੂਰੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਵਧੀਆ ਕਵਰੇਜ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਇਸ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਕੁ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਰਿਸੋਰਸਿਸ ਸੀਗੇ। ਔਰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ ਦ ਪੁਆਇੰਟਰ ਤੋਂ ਸੈਨ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ ਮੇਰੇ ਨਾਲ ਲਾਈਨ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਨੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਵਾਈਜ਼ ਪੀਲ ਦੀਆਂ ਮੋਸਟਲੀ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਵਰ ਕੀਤਾ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਦੇ ਮੁੱਦੇ। ਤੋਂ ਕੁੱਲ ਮਿਲਾ ਕੇ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਸੈਨ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਐਨਾਲਿਸਿਸ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ। ਸੈਨ, ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਰੇਡੀਓ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਸੀ ਐਂਡ ਗੁੱਡ ਮਾਰਨਿੰਗ।
Good morning, Mr. Saini. Thanks for having me.
And I'm regularly watching the pointer, and you have more or less covered all the ridings. So after this almost 1 month's campaign today, which is ending, what is your analysis so far?
I think the PCs should be quite safe in Mississauga, other than Mississauga Lakeshore. Which seems to have tightened up. The Liberal candidate might have a chance, but I think the PCs will likely win 5 or 6 of the 6 seats in Mississauga. In Brampton, the picture is very unclear. Parvasi Sarkaria in Brampton South looks quite safe, and Garrett Singh in Brampton East looks very safe. But the other 3 ridings, no one can tell what's going to happen. Literally a coin toss. Brampton North, it's actually a 3-way race. Even Liberal Harinder Mali is in there. But Brampton Centre, it's a 2-way race between Sarah Singh, the NDP incumbent, and Charmaine Williams, who is the Brampton City Councillor. That one, again, it's too close to call. I think Charmaine Williams is up by 1% according to the Main Street poll. And Amarjot Sandhu, like I said, in Brampton West, he's trying to hang on. It's going to be a close call. He's someone I want to talk about. I don't understand how anyone in Brampton West could vote for Amarjot Sandhu. I'm not trying to be political. It's just the facts. I don't have anything... I didn't know who he was. I don't have anything personally against him, but his record representing Brampton is atrocious. He was charged and convicted for operating, illegal basement apartments. And this was happening after he got elected. He didn't tell anyone that he had been embroiled in this problem during the 2018 campaign. He failed to disclose that, and then he ends up getting, like I said, convicted. 3 years later, there's still questions about his operation of illegal suites. He inside the legislature, he voted against Brampton's interests on almost every issue. Auto insurance discrimination, he voted against the bill that aimed to get rid of it. The hospital, he voted either absented himself or voted against motions to bring in not only one but two new hospitals in Brampton. You know, he voted against paid sick days, 10 paid sick days, which Brampton residents, his own constituents, desperately needed during the pandemic when so many factory workers, blue-collar workers, essential workers, you know, really badly needed more paid sick days. He voted against these things. He voted against reducing class sizes to reduce the spread of the virus. I could go on and on. It seems like, you know, instead of supporting his candidates who put him in power, he thought the job was the opposite, that he was supposed to go against his constituents. You know, he was supposed to go against his residents, the voters that put him in power. It literally makes no sense to me. Very odd behavior that you would get elected to office. Amarjot Sandhu and Prabmeet Sarkaria was pretty much the same. You know, they were both in there for 4 years voting time and again against what their constituents wanted, what they needed. You know, especially on the healthcare file, but also issues like education, class sizes. You know, it just, I really hope people go take a look at the record. You know, if you don't believe anyone, you can find these things out. You can go on the Hansard website and go read for yourself how they voted. If you want to read the Pointers articles, we break it all down. Those are all facts. We've taken that right from the provincial voting record. You can see yourself that Amarjot Sandhu, Prabmeet Sarkaria, they did not represent Brampton. They did not represent the best interests of their constituents. And I just think, you know, it's important, you know, even Dr. Brooks Salas, he wrote a very powerful op-ed piece that we ran in the Pointer on the weekend. And Dr. Brooks Salas, who used to be the head of critical care, the head of the ICU in Brampton Civic Hospital, he is even saying in this powerful piece that he wrote, do not vote for the PC candidates. I mean, why? He is basically saying he watched for 4 years while they hurt Brampton families. They caused undue harm and suffering to patients because they refused to respond to the needs of Brampton. And even when the doctor working inside of a hospital who sees everything day to day is telling people, look, I know what happened. I know that Amarjot Sandhu, Prabmeet Sarkaria, the PC party, Doug Ford, Christine Elliott, they could have helped Brampton when Brampton was struggling during the pandemic, and even before the pandemic when it clearly needed a new hospital. And nothing is being done. Now the PCs are claiming, oh, we're giving you a new hospital. And no, they're not. It's 250 beds. It's not even a full-service hospital. They're non-acute care beds, meaning there's not going to be any, you know, surgical care, cardiac care, emergency department support. It's going to be all things like complex care and, you know, transitional beds. That's not what Brampton needs. So this is, you know, what I think is very important, Mr. Saini, ahead of tomorrow's election for voters to really know, like, you're going to make a decision, and, you know, in the future, if you see the hospital is crowded and people are in the hallways, if you see you're not getting funding for healthcare, for education, for schools, but you voted for the PCs, then you only have yourself to blame.
Okay, so I understand that PCs before the elections, they didn't have any strong record to defend. I mean, Mr. Ford, when he took the charge as premier, immediately first thing he did, he abolished the funding for Brampton University, full-fledged university, which were, I don't know, liberals said that they will be bringing, but Ford did first thing, he abolished that funding. Then he did nothing.
$90 million for a downtown university campus in Brampton.
Yes.
The agreement had essentially been made by the previous government for $90 million to get that university campus built in Brampton. And again, now the PCs, they canceled it. Prabmeet Sarkaria, Amarjot Sandhu, Doug Ford, the whole party, the PC government, they canceled that entire project. And, you know, Ryerson University, it's now called Toronto Metropolitan University. It was going to be the partner. it was forced to pull out after Doug Ford and Pravneet Sarkaria and Amarjot Sandhu took away almost $100 million. The project couldn't go forward. Now they make claims, oh, we're going to bring a medical school. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. There's no medical school. There's not 1 cent of funding. There's been no approval. That process will take at least 10 years. There's other schools like York University who are in line for a medical school before Brampton. There isn't even a university partner. So they cancel the university, but now they claim there's a medical school. Well, which university is going to support the medical school? What hospital, which teaching hospital is there? They don't have any answers because they're just doing it as an election stunt to fool Brampton voters into thinking, oh, we canceled your university, but, oh, we'll give you a medical school. That medical school, they didn't even put one, Mr. Saini, there's not 1 cent in the provincial budget for that.
Okay, and now all of a sudden, 413 highway issue has came up, and I'm surprised that they are making this one of the biggest, achievement that we have announced. So what I can see is that all these announcements, Highway 413, we don't have any total budget of this highway, how much it's going to cost. Brampton Hospital work has still not been started even after 4 years. And
and just going to the highway, the highway was canceled because an expert panel of researchers and planning and transportation experts, they spent about a year, a panel, studying that 413 highway. And they concluded, so people need to be clear, it goes from roughly Milton to the north part of Vaughan. So it's gonna come through the western side of Brampton and then across Caledon and then connect up in Vaughan. So, Mr. Saini, who's going to use that highway? Tell me what voter in Brampton, what resident in Brampton is going to drive north to Caledon or out to the western part of Brampton to catch the highway to go towards Milton? Or who's going to go to that highway to go up to Vaughan?
Yeah.
Would tell me something. Would you ever use that highway?
No, I won't. I will use 407 or 401.
Right, and the panel has pointed it out. And here's the other thing. Even for people who do, let's say there's a truck driver who has to cut across, to get up to the 400, and they're going to use that highway. The research showed it's only going to save them 30 seconds compared to the existing routes that can be used. So you're going to save 30 seconds? You're going to build a $10 billion highway? And everyone knows the only reason they want the highway is because the developers, it's not for transportation. It's because the highway is the trigger. Then, once you have a highway, you get to use all the land around it to build more houses. But the problem is those houses, they're either up right along the green belt that's protected, or they're going to be very sprawling, expensive houses. It's not the type of housing that families need. And it's been shown by planners that we don't even need that land way up north, like up by the green belt. That's not where we need houses. We need houses in downtown Brampton. We need houses in downtown Mississauga. We need houses in areas where the jobs are. So this highway is just to pay off the developers who they've already bought the land. They own all the land around the highway. And now the highway will allow them to put up all these sprawling, houses.
Okay, Andrea Harwood has been to Brampton many a time during these election campaigns, and maybe because of her close proximity with Jagmeet or Gurratan, and she understands that she can get good number of seats from Brampton if they work hard. But we have not seen much Del Duca in Brampton, and as I said, that Mr. Ford somehow has never been interested to come to Brampton and take questions of reporters. Overall, his record during this campaign was also surprising to avoid the media. Maybe he's thinking that he's going to win the election without that, so no need to get into any controversy at the 11th hour?
Yeah, I'm unclear as to what the strategy is. it seems to me that Andrea Horwath, is focused on healthcare, but Stephen Del Duca, the one thing I'm a little bit disappointed about was that he didn't stake out clearly the main things that Peel needs and what the Liberal Party would do. So obviously healthcare. Andrea Horwath and the NDP, they've made that clear. They're supporting the $2 billion hospital in Mississauga, some other funding that Mississauga needs. But the main thing that the NDP have said is we want one new hospital and then a second new hospital. So Brampton will have 3, the existing hospital, and 2 new hospitals under the NDP platform. They're clear on that. It'll be one of the first orders of business. They've already been bringing motions forward during the past 4 years, so it's genuine because they've already brought those motions forward. They were all defeated by the PCs and Amarjot Sandhu and Pravneet Sarkaria and Doug Ford. So Stephen Del Duca, and maybe, Mr. Saini, I think you know this better than anyone. He could have focused on public safety and crime, which they've mentioned a little bit. He should have focused on health care, but we don't have any clear commitments. Like they haven't been as detailed and forceful about health care in Peel, particularly Brampton, and affordable housing, but also issues like foreign credentials, which the province can get involved in, and in fact, to their credit, I think the NDP did some work on that again over the last 4 years. But also auto insurance, postal code discrimination in Brampton. Like, why not be clearer about the issues that are most important, the cost of living, so auto insurance, groceries, gas prices, affordable housing. People are in desperate need of more. There's so many international students from India, from Pakistan, from Sri Lanka, all across South Asia. What are you doing to house them? Families, newcomers, immigrant families, working class families. They need better housing. Where was the plan around that? Again, going back to an issue like education, we know a little bit about what they were promising, but I'll ask you, Mr. Saini, for the needs of education, for example, specifically in Brampton, where the schools are all overcrowded. There's portables because there's so much growth that the schools are, bursting with students, and they have to use these portables. Did they talk about building new schools in all of the Brampton neighborhoods where the Punjabi community, the Chinese Canadian community, the Caribbean Jamaican Canadian community, like all the immigrant communities, all of the others who are moving into Brampton who want schools in their backyard for their children, just like they want a university? Like, have you seen Mr. Del Duca outline a plan?
Yeah, he promised to hire more teachers. He promised to invest in education, but really it didn't give clear, mandate on that. I'm running short of time. San, before you go, my last question: we couldn't see enough buzz in the community on ground regarding these elections. So I'm little disappointed. I will be surprised if we see heavy polls tomorrow. So it's not a good sign for a healthy democracy.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if the pandemic has something to do with it. I'm not sure if the fact that we just had a federal election in the fall, so almost back-to-back elections. Like I said, with the pandemic issues and people trying to get back to normal, people just too busy with their own like the cost of living is just, it's such a problem for so many people. People are picking up extra shifts. They're picking up extra work, Uber drivers, taxi drivers, truck drivers, factory workers. They're so busy trying to deal with the cost of living, all this inflation, the higher expenses. I wonder if people are too distracted, and then add on the pandemic, as we're still coming out of it and a little bit distracted by that. I don't know, but I do agree. Absolutely what you said. We noticed the same thing, a lack of buzz, a lack of activity on the ground, a lack of indication that there's a lot of attention and energy around this election. And I think you're right. I think we might see low turnout tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. So we would appeal all of our listeners, viewers who are watching us in their homes on TV, who are listening to us, we will request all of you, particularly we, the, new Canadians. I will never use word immigrants. We are the new Canadians. Our elders, they fought so much to get these rights. For all those immigrants who came to this country, and we have a say, if we can, we have right to criticize the political system, political leaders. We must go and vote. We must go out and vote. So tomorrow is the last and final day. So please go out and vote. This is what our appeal is. Sam, you want to say anything at the end?
No, just thanks so much to all your great coverage. Like, we follow Parvasi very, very carefully, and I hope the listeners and the viewers on the TV show and even your newspaper, Canadian Parvasi, really engage. Like, if people follow Parvasi, your audience, they will get all the information they need to go out and make good decisions. And again, I've said this to you, I don't know how many times, but I just commend you for everything you do for the community.
Oh, thank you, Sam. And we are also proud of you. And my take on this is that mainstream media is least bothered about Brampton, about Peel. I couldn't see much. Yeah, I couldn't see. Yeah.
Yeah, the mainstream media, like, these traditional big media outlets, I don't know, it's a resource issue or they're downsizing. They're so much smaller than they used to be, but there's no coverage. The Pointer obviously does what we can do. Parvasi does excellent coverage, but beyond that, like, it's sad, the lack of journalism from the mainstream media.
Yeah, they were never interested, but it's our responsibility as media persons to inform our readers, our listeners, our viewers. That's what we are doing. We are impartial, and we are very, very honest on that. And I always say with very, honesty that, listen, we are impartial, but we give you the facts. We provide you the facts. It's your now decision to vote for any candidate, but please go out and vote for sure. That's what we will keep you appealing tomorrow also. San, thank you so much.
Thanks, Mr. Saini.
Thanks a lot. ਇਹ ਸਨ ਸੈਨ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ। ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰੀ ਫੇਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹੀਏ ਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੇਨਸਟ੍ਰੀਮ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੰਦਾ, ਲੋਕਲ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਤਾਂ ਸੈਨ ਗਰੇਵਾਲ